Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy Muslim Women's Day. Today I'm going to be going live with my friend Amani so that we can discuss what today is, what today means. And I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit. Let me let her in. Welcome. Brazil, Ovio. Are y'all coming to the show in Sao Paulo? Hello.
Hi, beautiful. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? You look so pretty.
Oh my God, so do you. Happy Muslim Women's Day.
Happy Muslim Women's Day to you.
I miss you so much. I hope your Ramadan is going well. I hope everyone is enjoying the good vibes and energy this month.
Amen. Amen. Lord knows we need it.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot going on in the world today. So I don't know, I've been really excited to talk to you this month because I've just been thinking so much about how powerful it is when a third of the planet is all fasting together, and not just fasting from food and water, but also from negativity, from having a bad temper, from, any type of kind of negative influences, and just focusing on cleansing our soul from the inside out. It's just such an incredible and inspiring time for us to really try to put that energy out there into the world that we want to see happen, and change things internally and externally. And I know this is a conversation you and I have on a personal level literally every single time that we talk. So
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a better person to connect with on literally Muslim Women's Day of all days.
Yes, I'm so grateful that you wanted to share your energy with me. I'm grateful that you want to help educate folks about what Muslim Women's Day is, and even if you could go a little more into Ramadan and how it goes. And I know you were just talking about how it's not only a time of fasting from food and water, but it is a time of fasting from negativity, from bad temper, like you said, kind of indulging in lower vibrational frequencies that we humans tend to kind of do, and how powerful it is that so many folks are observing and are moving so spiritually conscious through this moment right now. And I know so many people are probably intentionally using this fast for, Muslim women and folks all around the world who are going through so much right now, So yeah, I wanted to pick your brain and have you share your thoughts.
Absolutely. I mean, for those that might not necessarily be familiar with it, Ramadan happens once a year. It actually changes on the calendar depending on the lunar calendar. So this is actually one of the last times that Ramadan overlaps with Muslim Women's Day and Women's History Month. Next year is going to be the last time this happens for the next 20 years. And then it just keeps on moving up in the calendar. So we are very connected with lunar phases, with the world around us, and just the time that bounds all creatures together. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing, that we're always changing with the world around us every year, and how we worship Ramadan. And I think it's about alignment, we really are all aligning together. And kind of what I was telling you about, I've been reflecting so much about how powerful it is that, what is it, 1.8 billion people on the planet now are all joining together in what is considered to be the holiest month of the year for us. Ramadan lasts 30 days. And it's most famous for the fast from food and water. That's pretty much what everyone knows it as. Muslims fast from sunrise to sunset. We always make a joke that it's like, no, not even water. Like we literally cannot consume anything during this time. And in my opinion, I think the abstention from food is just a physical reminder of what we really are supposed to be fasting from, which is attachment to anything in this worldly life, you know? Anything that keeps us attached to, like the way that you described it, which I found so beautiful, like lower vibrations, right? Like our lower selves. And it's really like meant to like ascend to a higher space during this month. I think that that's part of the beauty of so many people on the planet practicing it together, is that we can all kind of like ascend to a higher level together at the same time, and really just, you know, just be bound by each other's energy in that way. I think it's like really exceptionally beautiful. And it's really interesting that when you consume something, that's not the only way for your fast to be broken. You know, if you break your fast before sunset, you know, your fast can be broken by literally like losing your temper on somebody, you know, by like cussing somebody out. Like you might as well just like go eat at that point. Like that's considered, you know, that your fast is done. If you do any like major type of like sin or like something that can be harmful to another person, it kind of like negates the whole point of your fast and makes it like invalidated or void. And so, you know, I think that just goes to show that it's like a very holistic thing. It's not just about food. And, you know, to be honest with you, I don't think we have to look past what's happening in Palestine right now to even understand that. You know, like we are literally fasting at a time when an act of genocide and famine is taking place. You know, like people in Gaza don't even know when they're going to be able to break their fast. You know, I have been seeing that like viral post of a Palestinian family that had to break their fast on grass. And, you know, like at the most basic level, I think that Ramadan kind of reminds us the things that we should be grateful for. But it also just shows us, you know, like what's really important in this life. And it just puts things into perspective. And one thing that I really love to remember, and that I encourage my friends, because like obviously it is a very challenging time to be mindful of your fast and things like that. And you know, I had this conversation for Muslim Women's Day with SZA a couple of years ago. She was our live convo, and I asked her like what was the hardest thing for her to abstain from during Ramadan, and she said that it was smoking ganja, right? And I thought that was like so real of her to just like say it.
Yeah.
And like one thing that I like to think about is Ramadan, because it only lasts 30 days. It's such a good way to figure out like if you have any attachments, right? It's like if there's anything in this life that you are incapable of detaching yourself from for only 30 days of the year, then you can identify like, okay, this is where I have to like really improve or like focus on that detachment, you know? So it's a really great reset. It's an annual reset for the soul.
I love that. That's really beautiful. I feel like that really resonates with kind of like, I grew up Catholic. I don't necessarily practice Catholicism anymore, but I did grow up Catholic, and we had like Lent around Easter season, which I think is also similarly aligned with the lunar calendar and stuff, or the liturgical calendar, which follows the lunar calendar usually. So yeah, I think that whole process of having those 40 days of Lent where like you fast from you know, whatever it is that you feel like is having a hold on your spirit or energy, or like something that you feel like if you give it up for God, or if you give it up in the name of harnessing the energy around this time, you know, and allowing your vessel to be kind of as light as possible through it, you know. I always thought that was a beautiful concept. I think it's a beautiful concept. I just like doing fasts every once in a while in my own life for sure is very resetting and very grounding. So I can imagine like you said, having so many people doing it at the same time with such beautiful intention, I think is really, really special.
Yeah. And you know, also I think it's really beautiful that a lot of religions have the concept of fasting too. You know, like you mentioned Lent. You know, some Jews observe like Shabbat, for example. Like there's just so many different ways to apply it. And I do think it is so extraordinary that I think this year, more than any previous year, I've encountered so many people that aren't even Muslim that are just like participating in Ramadan and like choosing to fast alongside our community. And I think that's amazing. You know, like I don't think that identifying as a Muslim is necessarily a requirement for you to practice Ramadan or to participate in it. And I love that, you know, just witnessing the faith of people like in Palestine just go so viral has really exposed people to like, oh wow, that is a level of ascension that like I want to reach. You know, like how can you be like that patient? How can you be that steadfast? How can you be like that resilient as a soul, as a human being, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that that's inspired a lot of people to kind of like challenge themselves to reach a higher purpose too.
I feel that. Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming like when when there's no other option, nowhere else to turn, turning to God is kind of like something that we all, I think it's like an instinct kind of in a way, like to remember that we're a part of something greater than the moment we're passing through, you know? Um I can't
Great way to put
even
it.
fathom kind of like just the idea of having to move through being attacked so viciously and so callously, and for the whole world to see. I don't really, yeah, it is a kind of strength that I think has been in, although yes, inspiring to a lot of us, it's also just been so disheartening to that anyone would even have to embody that kind of strength for any kind of reason, um
1000%.
especially the reason of greed. You know, I feel like that's super, principally speaking, like across religions, across, you know, doctrines of faith, theology, whatever. I feel like that ethos of just humanity, of just each life is precious and every life is precious, and us kind of remembering that in how we honor our own bodies through those moments, so through these moments of fast, or through these moments of you know, such stark, um just so much coming at us, so much information, so many changes, so much happening, even like astrologically speaking. um
Oh my
there's
God,
a
I
lot
know.
being just revealed, and a
Yeah.
lot being kind of put into perspective, I feel like, in such a way that allows us to really deeply connect with that source and that humanity, I think, more than ever, at least for me anyway. I don't know if it's like specifically guiding me towards any religion per se, but like I will say that it definitely is allowing me to even further expand my capacity to understand how we're all just reflections of one another, and how we all have a responsibility to take care of one another, you know?
1000% to take care of each other and also the planet, you know, because I do think there's definitely an environmental aspect to it as well. You know,
Yeah,
it's about like consumption, you know, and
it really
just,
is about consumption. Conscious
yeah,
consumption, I think, is the only thing, the only way out of this, in my opinion, is that conscious consumption, like and in all facets, the same way we're talking about fasting in Ramadan, from like all different kinds of facets of energy, not just physically what we intake to our body, which of course, with when it comes to the boycotts and stuff, you can physically choose what you're ingesting, what you're paying
yeah,
money for, because being a conscious consumer is, I believe, one of the only ways that we're going to combat, or like
1000%.
kind of um realign
Yeah,
like what capitalism has done to us. It's being unconscious and committing our time, energy, and money into companies or individuals or ideologies or whatever it is that may kind of siphon us and siphon our intentions, because even if you're not, if, you know, this is what I mean by like conscious consumption versus unconscious, because you can unconsciously be doing all these things and not realize what kind of effect or impact you're having. But I think something that's beautiful about this time is that we're all creating consciousness around the way we're consuming, and we're sharing this information with one another, and being able to, you know, in real time see like, oh well, if I divest my energy from Starbucks, for example, like then I'm consciously doing something for my fellow human across the ways, who doesn't have a choice in what they're experiencing, but I have a choice in what I choose to buy. I have a choice in what I choose to consume. And because we're in this, you know, belly of the beast, if you will, you know, I think that that's going to be one of the most important things moving forward, and for us in general, is to be super conscious of the ways that, of the how we spend our time, energy, and money, and who and what companies and what energies we're giving that over to, you know?
yeah. We definitely are in the belly of the beast 1000%. We're like in the heart of empire. And as you know, for the past 6 months, I spent my time just like bouncing around Europe and really connecting with different communities out there, different people from walks of life and experiences and backgrounds. And, one thing that has become super clear is we are living in a time where there is one global superpower. And it's caused me to reflect a lot about the idea of purpose. It's like, okay, there's a reason why we were placed on this point in the timeline of humanity,
Oh my
right? there's
God.
a there's a reason why we're placed on this point in the timeline, and also within the belly of the beast, literally in the heart of empire. And I think it's our moral responsibility, like that consciousness that we have to open up to, is really awakening to our purpose, like understanding why it is that we're here, what is that higher reason, and one of the reasons why I just love having these conversations with you is because obviously, like, you and I come from two completely different upbringings, but also like not really, right? And like every time we have
There's
these
a lot of
conversations,
crossover for sure.
yeah, there's so much crossover, but you're also so easily able to identify like the higher message that kind of connects all of us, and that's really what I love about having these conversations and why they're so important. It's kind of like these are the threads that have to bind us to each other, and what our connection is on this journey that we're navigating together at this time. And like just going back to even like the way that you were describing consumption during capitalism, right? Like, it's during capitalism, obviously, like the only language they understand is through the dollar bills, right? So 1000% agree with you that that's one of the only means that we have to kind of like realign things. But also like occupation, right? Like capitalism and occupation, and what you said is greed, really all are interconnected and go hand in hand. And when I'm thinking about famine right now, and like Ramadan and its connection to the environment, like I'm thinking about how in Gaza, for example, like my Palestinian ancestors have lived off of the land for centuries. Like, we don't need anyone to provide food for us. Literally, just let us use our own land. Like, we can literally harvest our own crop. We can feed ourselves. We can feed our children, And it's like the fact that there's even the possibility of a famine to be happening on,
Well,
such a prosperous
yeah,
land.
it's orchestrated the same way that the Irish famine was
Exactly.
orchestrated. It's a part of conquering and genocide,
Yeah,
and occupation in general. That's how you know the difference between who is indigenous to the land and who is not,
exactly. Yeah.
because no indigenous people would destroy what they know gives them
Yeah.
life, because
Yeah.
that's the whole purpose of being alive, is to be in symbiosis with the natural world, because the natural world is an outer reflection of what's going on inside of each of us. And we
1000%.
are absolutely nothing if we have unclean water, if we have unclean air, if we have polluted soil. We see it in America a lot, because out here, that's kind of like there's no consciousness when it comes to how we protect our waters, or whether or not we protect our waters. We do not listen to our indigenous people who warn us of what it's like, or what happens when we build pipelines like the DAPL. You know what I mean? Like which happens every single time. It's kind of like consistent, that it just pollutes our environment and pollutes our drinking waters. And these are the things that cause illness within us. These are the things that cause physical illness, spiritual illness, and mental illness. At the end of the day, like we have all kind. I mean, this is not the only thing, of course, but all of these things intertwining with one another, and our inability to acknowledge the way that they're
Yeah.
intertwined, are what cause these disconnections from the solutions to these problems. Because the further disconnected we are from the land, the further disconnected we are from one another, and the
Yes.
further disconnected we are from ourselves. And when we're disconnected from ourselves, people can
Preach.
do things like be a part of the IDF, you know what I mean, or the IOF, and they can put themselves in positions where their direct orders are to destroy people, um, or they're not direct orders, they're just preference is to humiliate, torture, do things to their fellow human beings that are just so atrocious and so disgustingly disconnected from why we're here. um and allow for these kinds of realities to exist, to where we're watching them on a screen and we still can't seem to do anything about it. You know, it's been months, it's been 6 months, it's been since October. Well, this time around, you know, but it's really been years, and it's really been centuries of these karmic cycles that continue to play themselves out because we continue to refuse to learn our lessons. And that's individually, that's as groups, and that's as a collective at this point. You know what I mean? Because we are in a very globalized version of humanity right now. Like you said, you were traveling all around Europe. You're able to connect with people of all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of different experiences with the military industrial complex and its effect, the effect that it's had over the past few decades over the world. You know what I mean? Since World War II, I feel like things have slowly but surely been becoming more conscious to us. You know, we've kind of been like playing out these cycles very unconsciously for so long because we haven't been interconnected the way that we are right now. And so now it's like the closer we get with technology to understanding ourselves and our collective at this point in time and space, you know what I mean? The closer we're getting to unveiling the behemoth of disgust that is happening, and that is underneath why these things happen and continue to happen, and there's no real solution for it. You know what I mean? Because every time that there is a solution proposed, there's a counter force trying to thwart that or imprison that or silence that or, you know, control that to some degree, because it is trying to infiltrate or kind of wake people up to their own role in how these things go, you know, because it only takes siphoning of our own energy, of our own minds and spirits and physical bodies are the only things that allow these kinds of machines to keep going. We are the energy of the machine, you know. It's us. It's really us. And so yeah, I mean, I don't I know this is kind of off topic at this point,
No,
but also
at
super
all.
on topic, because yeah, all of this stuff we have to divest intentionally from these systems and create the new worlds. That's another thing, is like, it's kind of scary and daunting when you realize that all these systems are what they are, right? You're looking at them and you're like, wow, I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. It's been months. I'm trying my best. I'm not buying Starbucks. I'm not buying McDonald's. I'm not doing none of that. But also, what the fuck? Like, fast food and coffee, like, that's what's driving these kinds of things? Like, what? And it's so much deeper than that. And then you start to realize the two-party system and how it's not very two-party, how they're very pretty aligned on very specific things that drive certain narratives forward. And that narrative and that agenda is empire, is to make sure that we continue to conquer more spaces, to have control over those spaces. And it's just like this big war and proxy wars between these bigger wars. And they're all just so wasteful and violent and unnecessary, really, if we really look at them for what they are.
Of course.
And it's all these old heads who really don't realize how much this globalization of thought and ideas through social media has really radicalized us. Like,
oh, they know.
If we even call it radical, it's
they know.
Really
they're trying to ban TikTok because of it.
So y'all can't all come together to you know, make sure people get their student loans back, or make sure housing is affordable. None of that. Don't worry about us. Yes, please ban TikTok, because we're learning so much. Like,
no, honestly, it is really enraging, and you're looking at it from such a like deep and mindful perspective. This is the hope that other people can see it the same way. I do agree with you that I think we're kind of like in an awakening phase right now, and especially with young people like rising up now and seeing things through their own eyes. And you know, nobody knows better than young people like how effed up the world is. You know, nobody understands better than young people the solutions that are necessary for the change that we have to see. And we're tired of having our world be led by, no offense, but literally senile people that can't
it's not an
walk
offense,
without
it's a truth. It's
Like,
not
you
meant to
can't
offend.
walk without falling over, can't like say a sentence without like short circuiting like mid sentence. Like, why
And
are you there?
they're
How are you
just
supposed to
they're
lead us
also
into the future?
and they're also so caught up in the old way of being, of like denial and lying and manipulation, and it's just so awkward at this
Yeah.
point because it's like, baby, we got receipts in real time.
Yeah, and
So
it's like
like
it's
I
so
understand
transparent.
like the Nancy Pelosi's of the world. I'm just like, baby girl, I know that it worked back in the day. I understand why you think this method of operation works, but TikTok, like, what are you
Like, we
doing,
see
mama?
you, we see you right
We're gonna
now. Yeah.
eat you up every time because you're saying ridiculous things. They don't make sense. You're
Exactly.
all lying to yourselves, and not really to yourselves because y'all are getting APAC money. So,
But you
you
make
know,
a really good point, like going back to what you were saying about space and time. This realignment is all happening during a very crucial year. Like, we are not only, like you said, in the belly of the beast, but it's also an election year in the belly of the beast. And
I shiver at
I,
the
yeah, no, I know. No, that's why I left. I was like, I'm out of here before the Republican debates. Like, y'all are on your own. Like, let it burn. But I actually,
honestly on some let it burn
like,
shit too. I'm not gonna lie. I don't give a fuck no more. I know that I've been giving a huge fuck for a long time.
I
This might be
know.
my coming out story of I don't give a fuck anymore,
But
y'all.
you know what, though?
I
What
want
I
to
think,
I don't want to be nihilistic, but I also want to be realistic. And to me, like, there's no larger exposition than what these last 6 months have been about what the state of politics is in the United States
I've been struggling with
and
it.
who
Yeah.
is running this
Yeah,
place.
for
And
sure.
in such a sense, like, I have no interest in like feeding that. I have no interest in that. So for me, it's more like, who do I want to be organizing with? Who are the coalitions that are out here really doing shit on the ground? How can I invest my time, energy, and essence into things that are focused on building the new realities, not on perpetuating the old realities? And to
Exactly.
me, both parties are doing that right now. Like, they're like, what are we talking about? Like, how is the Supreme Court pardoning Trump, and Trump really real life a Republican candidate?
No, I mean, how did the
I
Supreme
don't.
Court decide that like corporations are people? And also,
Right.
what we're seeing with this like two-party system, this is something that I really became exposed to while I was traveling, is a lot of other Western countries are trying to like follow the lead of America. Like the UK now, which had like such at least more diversity than America in terms of like the political parties represented. Now they're going into a binary, right? Where it's like a two-party system now. And it's like, bro, that's
Well, it's giving like a Middle Ages. It's, you know what like it's giving like, let's revert back to, it's giving, we're
yeah,
starting the
let's go
cycle
back to the
again.
Stone Ages.
Where
Yeah.
it's just the cycle all over again, right? We come to this point of enlightenment where we get scared of ourselves, like we do in our own personal journeys, right? We come to confrontation with our shadows, and it's very difficult to not look at them. And our inability to look at our shadow, our inability to look at our role in how much violence has been perpetuated on this planet and how much destruction has been perpetuated on this planet, our inability to really reconcile with that truth and the truth of how this country was built and what built this country, what intentions built this country, what violence built this country, until we really address that, the root issues here, we're never going to get past this point. So for me, I see kind of like a split, right? I see there's people who are like, have been so radicalized in the sense of like 2015, Trump riling himself up for his presidential election in 2016. I noted it then, and I was much younger then, but like that was almost a decade ago at this point.
Yeah.
But when you really think about what it did to the collective psyche, like to see such blatant bigotry and like unchecked bigotry, and then for that bigotry to be validated by what was supposed to be the land of the frees like system, and then to watch everything that's unraveled since about how a literal criminal is like idolized
Yeah.
by so many American minds. And it's funny because a lot of these American minds think that they're being like anti-system. and they're like, well, we just don't like establishment politics, and we don't agree with the man, and we don't whatever. And like, it's in that degree, I'm like, yeah, I agree with you, but like, y'all are putting all your eggs in a criminal's basket, which is weird behavior. Because if you're really about the liberation of people, and you're really about like whatever the Constitution was talking about, which is really what indigenous people were already talking about, okay? Also, we borrowed their ideas to write it into the Constitution. All of these things, all of these legalities, all of these like white supremacist ideologies and realities, like they are not, they're the dominant narrative for a lot of people, but they're not the dominant narrative for the majority of people. Because we have been siphoned into like, oh, you guys are minorities. You're a minority, and 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 you're a minority. All of you guys are minorities because you're not white. But if y'all combined all of your minority together, all of a sudden you're the majority. That's crazy. And if as long as y'all don't realize, as long as that point isn't realized, and and that's what I feel like this movement,
the mental occupation.
It's mental occupation, like you said, exactly. So it's like we're seeing like, what's his name in the UK? The he's not even white. He's talking like he's a spokesperson. All of the spokespeople for all of the crazy white supremacy shit that's going on right now are literally POC. Like, and it's like, it's wild to me to watch, because I'm like, I wonder what your ancestors would have to say about this. This is really interesting, because I don't understand like what we're doing here. But it's also, it's by design. You know what I'm saying? It's not even their real fault, except for the fact that they take the check. But you know, other than that, like they're not actually grounded in truth. They're not actually grounded in reality. Not at all. They're all out here just like literally parroting a narrative that is eons old, that is centuries old. It's they don't even change the words that they say. You know, it's, and you're right, it's the divide and conquer method. It's going to always work as long as the people who are being divided are unaware of how they're being manipulated, you know? Totally.
And actually, like, there's one thing that I've been reflecting on also that I think you'd find really interesting. I'm like curious what you think about this. So again, I love the theme of like time and space that we're talking about. And in Islam, we totally talk about time like it's relative, right? Like, we believe that there's, compared to like the past, like in the future, time like moves so much quicker, and things of that sort. And it's kind of like a reflection of the consciousness of the people and where they're at spiritually. And one thing across the board, literally every single Muslim that I've spoken to, like those of us that regularly observe Ramadan, like for most of our lives, all of us are like, oh my God, this Ramadan is flying by the fastest of any Ramadan we can remember. Really? Like, we're already over halfway through Ramadan. This is unheard of. Like, we literally just started. And the fact that we are already approaching like the final 10 nights of Ramadan is shocking to so many of us. And there's been a lot of conversation about there being some type of lesson in this. There's a reason why we're all feeling time for this Ramadan, because like it's a blessed month. Like, it's during this time, you know, our good deeds are like they're multiplied, right? Like, anytime we do something with good intention, the return back on that energy is like 10, 100-fold, you know, like everything counts so much more. So the more time we have during Ramadan, the more blessed we are to like have that opportunity to do good. And the fact that it feels like that window of time is so narrow this year, especially as like a genocide is taking place on Holy Land. You know, there's like so much reflection in that. I'm like literally getting goosebumps talking about it right now, you know? Like, I can barely catch my breath even just like describing to you like this phenomenon that so many of us are feeling. But I felt like it's so tapped into kind of like what you're talking about in terms of like those themes of where we're at as a humanity and stuff. Yeah, it's like we're feeling it. Yeah. Like, something is different this year. There's definitely a shift.
There's definitely a shift. I feel a shift everywhere.
It's scary.
It is. I feel like it's as scary as it is promising in a way. Like, when I was talking about the split, there's like that side that I was talking about that's like more ready to dive back into the old ways and ready to be traditional in a sense, and then there's the like new earth that is formulating and that is here and that is present and that is I feel like so potent in the Free Palestine
Yeah.
movement, which is the interconnectedness of each other, like of what we are and what it means to be alive and how precious life is and how worthy we all are of committing to ourselves to something greater than ourselves right now, you know, because I think that that's probably why y'all are so we are also connected to each day that's passing, because each day that's passing is another day that we lose people,
Yeah.
is another
Every day
day
of
that
suffering. Yeah.
hundreds of people are subjected to the machine. um and I think even like I want to again highlight today's like Muslim Women's Day. I think of all of the Palestinian mothers who have had to endure such crazy abuse and lose their children and lose limbs and lose faith and lose their minds in all kinds of ways. I think of all of the young girls who are watching all this destruction around them and subject to violence, sexual violence, subject to so much stereotype, and so much like othering through this process, because I feel like it must be so disheartening to watch all these proposed feminists who always have some shit to say be so incredibly
Yeah.
silent, through the suffering that we're watching every single day on these
I
platforms.
mean,
um,
especially on the topic of like reproductive justice, sexual violence, like these themes that Western feminists champion. And it's like brown women are dropped out of that cause, you know? And I love that you kind of like brought it back to connecting it to Muslim Women's Day, because this year is really different than previous years in that the theme of this year is Iman, which is the Arabic word for faith. And it's also the name of my mother, who, as you know, she passed away a few months ago.
Yeah.
Thank you. And my mom was a Palestinian mother. You know, she gave birth to a Palestinian daughter. And the fact that we're honoring this theme connected to like motherhood, like the sanctity of motherhood, at the same time as women in Palestine are being forced to have C-sections without anesthesia. They're dying in childbirth. Premature babies that otherwise we live in 2024. It's so easy for them to live through this, but they're not able to survive. Like we're in the freaking medieval ages because Gaza has been bombed back to the Stone Ages and they don't even have electricity, let alone basic medical resources, right?
Yeah.
The fact that Palestinian girls and young women don't have menstrual resources and are getting infections. You know, all of these things are happening under our watch. And yet, you know, the whole purpose of Muslim Women's Day is to push back against media misrepresentation. When you think about the topic of sexual violence, for example, like what has been the number one rampant thing that has attempted to justify these atrocities against the Palestinian people? Oh, Hamas rapes Israeli women, right? A story that was perpetuated by the New York Times and has since been debunked multiple times. Meanwhile, as we speak, another hospital is actively under siege by occupation forces of Israel. And there are eyewitness accounts of Palestinian women literally being raped inside of the hospital, okay? Like trigger warning. Pregnant Palestinian women that are being subject to this violence. Like it's literally documented. Human rights organizations have even been for years prior to October 7th documenting this type of sexual violence against Palestinian women, hostages,
Women,
prisoners in Israeli
men, and
jails.
children. I think it's so
Yes,
important to reiterate. It's not
thank
only
you.
just it is the women, but it is also the men,
Thank
and it
you.
is also
Yeah,
children.
yeah, absolutely.
I actually really hate how comfortable as a collective we become with talking about pedophilia in not an outraged way. Like
Oh,
it's to me way too casual, like the way people be talking about pedophilia. Like it's they speak about it with a very agenda heavy rhetoric that is always targeted at queer communities. And we never, ever, ever acknowledge that the majority of these violences, of instances of violence that are related to sexual assault and related to, you know, violent sexual assault and pedophilia, have to
Yeah.
do with religious institutions, military institutions, and, you know, like political establishments. Like
But
all of
also,
these are the
also
main
know,
perpetrators of these kinds of crimes.
but also note how it's specifically brown children that are adultified, right?
Right.
Like when that prisoner exchange happened a few months ago, it was literally like, you know, exchanging hostages for Palestinian children prisoners in military jails. And the way that Western media talked about them was Palestinian prisoners under 18.
Yeah,
You mean children.
the passive voice when talking about minors is astounding. It's actually really violent, in my opinion. It's
Absolutely.
very targetedly violent and very just disgusting and disheartening to see, like from a perspective of someone who really values like journalism and like anthropological study and being mindful of how we document reality, like especially considering how often, you know, colonizers and the colonizing narrative gets to write history and gets to rewrite the story of how these things happen. Like when we talk about like an establishment owned news source like the New York Times, which is, you know, owned by a billionaire, so like of course they're not really going to give us the proper narratives. And they don't do the due diligence. Even they have had so many passive slash inflammatory slash completely falsified information published under their watch and under their editor's watch and under their owner's watch. And so for me, like that's not even a credible news source at all to me
And
anymore
also
in any
notice
kind of
how
capacity.
it's always people of color journalists that are accused of being biased. Like they can't speak about issues pertaining to them without some sort of slant or whatever, when they're like the best people to be talking about those issues.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, it's like the standard is a white Western perspective. That is not biased according to our definition of it. It's like, no, that's the truth, and anything that wavers outside of that, that's the bias. You know, it's just like the
Yeah.
way that we even define our representation, the way that we tell these stories. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, throughout history, it's the victor that holds the pen. You know, that's who writes history.
Yeah.
So
It's also very evident in just how many Palestinian voices in journalism have been silenced, have been killed, have been like and killed like in droves with
yeah, no
um
accountability.
no accountability and no
Yeah,
acknowledgement by the Western media at all.
yeah,
At all.
yeah,
And it's, to me, it's just been again like astounding to watch. Like I always understood. I don't think I've ever seen like a propaganda operation in real time, like and noticed it, you know? Like I feel like I've been young most of my life. I'm 27 years old, you know. I feel like this is the first war that I have seen with my own energy.
yeah,
Like of course when I was younger, when 9/11 happened, I was really young. I was like 7 years old, 8 years old. I was really young and I didn't understand or think about these things at that time. You know, I will say, like, just be honest, like I wasn't on that shit. And I was
yeah,
very Americanized, you know what
yeah,
I mean? I think everyone born in America was super
yeah,
Americanized and indoctrinated, especially before the interconnectedness of what these movements online have been excavating and teaching us as we grow and as we grow with one another through these moments, you know, and learn about other people's stories and learn about histories. Like I did not know the entire Palestinian history, and
yeah.
now I'm very well versed on
Most
what happened in
listen,
Palestine.
most people didn't. If all you went by was American media, there's absolutely no way you would have had any idea about Palestinian history
Yeah, and
whatsoever.
the main reason that I know is because I have Palestinian friends, because I have friends who are in grassroots movements. I have friends who are in mutual aid programs. I have friends who work in these kind of environments, who have worked for for NGOs and like realize like, oh my God, like this is a whole entire hierarchy and they don't actually help the people or us. They don't resource us who are doing the work. Like I've seen all this happen in real time over the course of my lifetime. And so of course the average person who is like 0% invested in these things and much more invested in like pop culture, for example, or like whatever else it is in American culture that distracts the average consumer, like of course you're unaware, and of course you don't really know what to do or where to go or how to go about it, you know. It's only valid. But at the same time, when you're confronted with something, it is your responsibility to grow and to choose who you're going to be in the face of this reality that we're all having to face right now, you know. And people have chosen up, that's for sure.
Yeah.
People have really chosen some vile ideologies and to support some really, really seriously just devastating realities like that. I'm just like, how do you even think this way? How do you
Yeah.
react this way? How
I've
do
been seeing
you
a lot of,
justify these kinds of things?
I've
I
been
don't.
seeing like so much on social media lately of like soul death
Yes,
and how that's the only reason why any of this is even possible right now, you know. And there's like, do you watch Black Mirror?
of course.
Okay, I feel like we had this
Of
conversation, but
course.
there's like this one episode of Black Mirror that's my favorite. It came out years ago. It was in like the 3rd season or something, called Men Against Fire. Spoiler alert, if anyone wants to know the ending, like skip past this part. But I think that episode is like such a metaphor for what's happening right now. Basically, it's like it takes place in like a near future time where the military has access to this technology where they can like see holograms in front of them. They can all like see the same thing together and like, you know, strategize or whatever. And they are all on a mission to defend their country against roaches, which are like these human monster type of creatures that are out to like kill all the humans. And it's like, if they don't kill them first, they're gonna get infected, they're gonna try to kill us, whatever. And so like this one soldier, his technology starts glitching. And he then, like, when it stops working, he realizes that the people that he's been slaughtering are actual human beings, like innocent people, like trying to defend their families. And he was like in their homes butchering them.
Sound
And you
familiar,
know,
everyone?
it sounds so familiar because I genuinely believe, I mean, even looking at Israeli society, right? Like seeing the way that they react to this butchery happening against innocent
Yo,
Palestinian
it's
people,
been jarring.
it's so jarring, and it's made me think so deeply about like the level of
Of
brainwashing that needs to
indoctrination.
take place in order for you to see this in front of you and like make a TikTok mocking it and making fun of it and dancing on people's graves. Like the level of depravity that requires, like,
So long.
you know. And in the episode, there's like, you know, a person like tries to like wave a wand in front of him to like make him like, you know, open his eyes and stuff like that. And I've been reflecting so deeply about like, what is that wand? You know, what is it that's gonna make that like brainwashing, that technology start glitching for people to open their eyes? And I can't help but keep coming back to it being social media. That's why it's like, God forbid America owns TikTok, because we all know what is going to happen as a result of that, you know, like.
I don't think TikTok's going to sell to America. I think it's just not going to be present in America.
Like,
And then maybe that'll
again,
actually make Americans give a fuck about what's going on. But it just will be really sad for it to take us taking away a social media. But also, regardless of what happens with TikTok, Meta, like, please, extremely censored. This,
yeah.
I'll be lucky if this breaks like a few thousand views. You know what I'm
I mean,
saying? Like,
like that was another
I've been
thing.
incredibly censored.
Yeah.
I already know that because
Same here. Same
yeah.
here. Actually, this is really interesting. This just came out a couple of hours ago, but the board at Meta, which is an independent board of like experts that they're not hired by Meta, but they advise Meta. They just came out with a decision basically saying that Meta has been using Arabic words to indiscriminately, you know,
suppress
suppress free speech and censor people across the platform. But like, yeah, Meta doesn't have any type of, again, like
accountability.
like the
There's
ICJ,
no accountability.
they have no like legal you know, requirement to listen to this board, just like Israel doesn't have any legal requirement to listen to the international court, you know. So it's kind of like, how
so what
implement
exactly
like,
so I think that's where I'm at, right? Is like, okay, so thank you for revealing that every single institution is a farce and only used to make sure to,
it's a power play.
And it's to imprison people, certain people.
Literally,
it's to imprison certain people and to allow other people to walk free. Because I guarantee that if what, for example, Trump has done, right, his own criminal history, if that would have been done by the average person, who didn't have the money that he has or the access to
Oh my
influence
God,
he
no,
has,
like, um,
he would be
Charlemagne
rotting
a
in
couple
prison
days ago,
and considered a traitor.
Charlemagne said that Donald Trump is unlocking levels of white privilege that he's never seen before in his
Never seen
lifetime.
it.
And I was like, that is so freaking true.
To
That's
literally be like,
exactly what's
you know
happening.
what? I know I potentially might have started an insurrection or whatever because I have a fan base who's like rapidly obsessed with me
But
because they have two
like, can
brain
I
cells
please hold on to my
collectively.
billions?
But like, maybe I don't need to pay you back, and like, maybe I can like sway the Supreme Court to just do what the fuck I want. And I guess what? I might be president again too.
Like, literally.
Like,
honestly, if Trump gets elected, we
if that's
deserve
what
it.
America chooses, if that's what if that's what the majority of individuals who are living in this country right now choose to fall behind and choose to just kind of let happen, we deserve whatever comes next.
Exactly.
Is how I feel. And at the end of the day, like, Biden and his administration have proven their colors about what they do and what they are and who they work for. And so to me, the only thing I care about is organizing behind third party and organizing behind like people who are actually doing the work. And for me, that's Claudia and Karina. Like, I just feel like they are a powerhouse as far as like a tool for educating. Because I don't believe that that we're gonna vote third party. I don't believe America's awake enough. I don't feel like they're uncomfortable enough. I feel like shit like real fucking nasty before we really start moving, because unfortunately most people are extremely apathetic in this country is what I've also learned. And people
1000%.
extremely apathetic, extremely selfish, extremely materialistic, so caught up in like their own pleasures that they don't even consider how they contribute to literal destruction. And so you can't, those are not savable energies to me anymore. I used to think like, oh, I can convince you to care, you know what I mean? Like, hello, look at what's going on. Like, isn't this really bad? Don't you agree this is really bad? And I had so many people be like, no, I don't agree that that's really bad. And actually, I don't give a fuck at all. Actually, I actually love that they're dying. I love that that's happening. Actually, let me go buy this. So I was like, I share
You're too far gone.
a lot of psychopaths, and I'm just I'm not interested in changing their minds anymore. I'm more interested in like the people who are watching this, the people who can hear what we're saying and resonate with what we're saying. I'm more interested in them feeling less alone and more emboldened to go towards movements. So for me, like the PSL, like we need more radical energy. We need to like actually be creating these systems. We actually really need to be educating people. We actually really need to be doing grassroots work to like get to people's because a lot of people are sick and tired. Like, let's be honest, like everything going on in America right now, the fact that we're focusing billions and billions and billions of dollars. We just gave Israel what $3.8 billion last week, like again. And in the midst of they're like, oh, well, you know, we definitely want to do everything we can for the humanitarian crisis that is happening in Gaza. We'll parachute drop some boxes of this expired food.
I just saw this clip before this live of Biden like speaking at like giving another one of his speeches and being disrupted by Palestine activists. And for the first time, I guess like his PR people gave him the memo. He was like, no, you know, let them talk. Like they have a point. We need more aid to get into Gaza. And it's
we need more aid because that's how we're gonna justify building.
You're kind of killing them, actually.
No, but
like you're actually killing them.
That's how they're
like,
gonna justify building the little pier for the gas. That's how they're gonna justify it. Yeah, the dock that we need. But this is like what's scary to me is the fact that they speak and people actually hear truth when they speak. Because I'm like, this is the most obvious lie in the world to me.
Here's the thing, actually, is that and on the topic of like indoctrination. And I want to say that I admire you so much for your honesty and vulnerability to admit, like, yo, I used to be ignorant to this stuff. Like, I didn't know any better. You know?
I really didn't.
Because so many people don't even realize that they're ignorant about this stuff, you know? And this was the first time this past year, it was the first time that I actually spent time living outside of America, you know, for an extended period of time. And the thing that I took away the most was like, Americans are in such a bubble. Like we're talking about Israeli society being indoctrinated. Americans have our own system of indoctrination. like I was exposed to so like the way people are talking about issues in America and the United States with like so much more nuance and logic and reason than we even do in America. I was learning things. I was like, wait, we're conditioned that that's politically incorrect to, you know, say or think about these things or whatever. And they're like, the hell? What do you mean? Like, this is like, it's the
The
truth, you know?
reality.
Yeah. And so I was just like, I was really, it was awakening different parts of me. And so I want to make it a point to mention that because, you know, I'm sure a lot of people listening to you openly admit that are like, oh, damn, like, you know, maybe for the first time they feel comfortable turning inwards. And I want to say it too. It's like there were things that I also was not educated on, you know, and we are on a lifelong journey of enlightenment.
Yeah.
And that's nothing to be ashamed of, you know,
And we're also here to heal karmic cycles.
yeah.
I think is something that's really important to acknowledge too. Like these are narratives that have been going on for centuries.
Yeah.
And it's no accident that we're as interconnected as we are, that we are able to have, because you're not even in America right now, are you?
I am.
Oh, you are?
I'm back in Jersey. Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
I
here.
didn't even
Yeah,
know.
I just got back
Okay.
like a week ago.
Okay, well, you're here, but you weren't here. You and I could still have a conversation while you're in Europe and I'm in LA. You know what I'm
With like
saying?
the time zones, I was catching you at like Sunday morning. It was like nighttime for me. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but like even like speaking to that, like we're so interconnected right now, and
Yeah.
we are all a part of the diaspora of empire.
Exactly.
So many of us are the product of people migrating because of war, because of famine, because of religious intolerance, because of persecution, because of like no one of us has a monopoly on that narrative, not one of us, because even white folks had an original indigenous place they came from and they were chilling in, and then some other dominant figure comes in and is like, actually we want all of this. Take Greece and Rome for example, you know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, like just the people who are more willing to pull the trigger at the end of the day are the ones who have been able to rule, and the ones who are willing to be like, hey, here's my promise, and someone else on the other end be like, all right, you're going to honor this promise, and that trust be broken. And that is like the consistent breaking of trust over the course of centuries has gotten us to this position that we're in now, where none of us trust each other. And then but then the ones of us who are choosing to trust each other, who are choosing to build connection, who are choosing to build community out of these moments, we're in a learning process. None of us are going to be perfect in that process. A lot of us are dealing with years of indoctrination. A lot of us are dealing with years of self-hatred that we have to deprogram within ourselves to even show up properly in our own communities. You know, like there's so many layers to how these karmic cycles have been playing out over us for so long.
Yeah.
But this is also the time for us to be mindful and be conscious and be like, oh shit, I play a huge role, even if I don't feel like, even if I feel like I'm insignificant. Each one of us plays an individual role in the reflection of our collective soul.
Yeah.
And we cannot collectively reflect love if we're not individually reflecting love in our own lives, for ourselves, for one another, and for like strangers who are going through some shit that if you put yourself in their shoes for 0.2 seconds, literally all it takes is, what if I was the one who was going through this right now? What if it was my children? What if it was my father? What if it was my grandfather?
Yeah.
What if it was my son?
It's so shocking to me that people are not able to easily place themselves in that kind of like empathetic space.
There's
like
a
how
lot
are
of
you incapable of
there's a
imagining
lot
this
of
happening to you?
narcissists. There's a lot of narcissists because American culture breeds narcissism. It breeds being self-centered. It breeds being egocentric and materialistic and being
And
defined.
there's also racism too. I'm sorry, but all of us out here that have brown skin, literally witnessing these bodies getting ripped apart, are like, our hearts and souls are crying out in pain for people that we've never even met. We're not even going through anything relevant to what they're going through, and yet we are literally in pain. So many of us have not been able to like sleep at night for the past 6 months with all of this going on, you know? It's just like the fact that we can like I wouldn't be surprised if like there is life out there, but they just have refused to make contact with us because of just like how gross humanity is right now, like just us as human beings. we have to do better. Like it's where we're at is it's not a good place right now.
Well,
It's
it's up
absolutely not.
to us, right? We have free will. And that's the main thing about all of these religions and all of these things that we're all trying to like aspire to be a part of. You know, we have free will. We have the freedom of choice. And that is where we have to take collective ownership of the problems that we're seeing. You know, like we can't separate ourselves from what's happening because we're Americans paying American tax dollars. You know what I'm saying? Like we can sit here and we can watch and we can see things for what they are, but like it's all in this that allows it to exist. You know, it's like quantum physics. Like what we give attention, what we that's what consciousness is. It's
Yeah,
us
yeah.